Okay, we're looking at LSAT 41. This is logic game 3. Each of the 7 members of the board of directors serves on exactly one of 2 committees, the finance committee or the incentives committee. Only board members serve on these committees. Committee membership is consistent with the following conditions. Okay, so what we know is that we've basically got 2 committees or 2 groups that are occurring, and everybody has to be in one of the groups, and no person can be in more than one group. What we don't know as of now is how many people are in each group. Okay? So if G serves on the finance committee, then H serves on the incentives committee. So if G is in finance, then H is in incentives, and then the contrapositive is just merely the removal of the necessary condition. And I could say if H is not an I, but because there's only 2 groups, it's just if H is an F, then G is an I. Now, what you should understand is this does not mean that they cannot be in the same group together. It just means that they cannot be in the finance group together, because if one of them's in the finance, the other has to be in the incentives. Okay, but there is nothing to say that they both cannot be in the incentive group. And this is something that you just have to know. This is a basic concept. And it's on another portion of my website where I discuss necessary and sufficient conditions. This should be something that you just absolutely know. Okay? The second rule, if L is on finance, then M is an incentive and U is an incentive. Okay? And then the contrapositive to that is if M is in finance or U is in finance, then L has to be an incentive. Okay? The third rule says W cannot be in the same group as Z. Okay, this actually means that they could never be in the same group as each other. This and this do not mean the same thing. And the test maker on this particular analytical game wants you to understand that. If you don't understand that, you have no chance at being able to answer the questions consistently correctly. Okay, the next rule is if U and G cannot be in the same group together. These are not conditional rules. These are not fourth order rules. They're just exclusion rules. One cannot go with the other, no matter what. Okay, and then the last rule says if Z is in finance, then H must be in finance. And then the removal of the necessary condition says that if H is an I, then Z has to be an I. Okay, now again, this does not mean that they have to be in the same group together. Okay, it just means that if one's in finance, if Z's in finance, H has to be in finance. If H is an I, then Z has to be an I. But if Z is an I, H could be an F or I. It doesn't matter. And the way that you would know that is if you look at both of these, ZI, HF, there is no ZI or HF in this sufficient condition. So this breaks none of these rules. Okay, so again, the test maker is wanting you to understand that these don't have to be in the same groups. Okay, it's just if Z is an F, they have to be in the same groups. And that if H is an I, they have to be in the same group. Okay, so those are the rules, and we want to use the hierarchy of rules to solve the scenarios. And what we're given here is we're not really given a first order rule that says that, you know, U goes in the F committee. But what we are given is we're given these rules, we're given an indirect first order rule via the exclusion rules. Because if W cannot go in the same group as Z, all we need to do is break it into 2 worlds, and that is all that W and Z could actually do. And this is where we begin. Okay, so this rule is taken care of. And now with U not being able to be in the same group with G, we should understand that all we need to do is create 4 scenarios to determine the entirety of what W, Z, U, and G could do. And so it's something that you should know in your head. If you have 2 exclusion rules of all different variables, and there are merely 2 groups, there are going to be only 4 scenarios that can flow from these variables, and I'll show you it just happens like this. I just bring the W and Z down because these are my 2 worlds, so the WZ would always remain the same. And then I just do this, U and G, or G and U. That's it. Now here, I just create one more. and this is U and G and U. And that is all that can happen from our exclusion rules, and we're merely left with conditional statements now. And so what we need to do now is look at these conditional statements, look at the sufficient condition, okay, which oftentimes I circle it so that we know what we're looking at. And basically, if any one of these variables happen, if any one of these situations happen, okay, in this, then we know that it triggers the necessary condition. So we'll start with, do we have a G or an H in the finance? Well, we don't have a G or an H here. We do have a G in the finance. So if G is in finance, then H must occur in I. Okay? Do we have a G in finance here? No. We have a G in finance here. That means that H must occur in I. All right, so we are now done with that. Let's look now at this rule. Do we have an L in finance? And there are no L's that are utilized because we're only looking at W and Z and U and G. So this situation doesn't occur. Now let's look at this. Do we have an M in finance or a U in finance? We should end up with a U in finance because of the exclusion rule. Let's just find it. U is in finance here. If U is in finance, okay, then L has to be an I. So we have this. And here again we have U in finance, so L needs to be in incentives. All right, now that's the entirety of that rule. Now let's go down here. Do we have a Z in finance? We don't have a Z in finance here or here. We do have a Z in finance in both of these. If Z is in finance, then H needs to be in finance, so we would need to put an H here. And Z is in finance here, H would need to be in finance, so this one falls out. Nothing can happen. Okay, so now we just need to look at what occurs, the ones that we've added. We've added H and L. Okay, we just need to go back now through these rules and see if any of them apply. Well, we have an H in finance here, and if we have an H in finance, we need a G and I, so that works. Okay, and we don't have an H in finance anywhere else. Do we have an L in finance? No, we do not. Okay, and then do we have an H in incentives? If we have an H in incentives, we need a Z in incentives, so that works. Everything is fine. So we're left now, we have 6, 5, and 5. We're going to have two variables left over. We have M and H left over here, and we just need to consider what can happen. We have an M and L over here, okay, and then we're just left with an M right here. And we just need to see if it's okay that they stay in parentheses, which means they can go either which way, or if some sort of, if we place one somewhere that it triggers something. So let's look at M and H real quick. If H was in finance, we need G to be an incentive. So because G is an incentive, H could be in finance, but H could also be an incentive. So just remember that it doesn't, just because G is an incentive, it doesn't make H go there. That would be mistaking necessary for sufficient. So all that we know is that if H is in finance, G has to be an I. So H could be here or here, which is why I pointed this out to you. You could have G and H both in I. Okay. Now, if we look at if M is in finance, we need L to be in I. Well, because L is in I there, M could be in finance or M could be in incentive. And again, the reason is because if M is in F, that's triggered the necessary condition, and the necessary condition occurs with L and I. But if I were to put an M here, we never trigger this condition, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and then let's finish it out. If H is in I, Z is in I. So we have that necessary condition over here. That means that H could go here too. So we don't have any issues with M and H, meaning that they could go anywhere. And there are 4 scenarios that could occur from M and H. You could have M and H here. You could have M and H here, M and H here, or H and M there. And that's all there is to it. Okay, now let's look at this particular scenario with M and L. And let's look at this. If L is in F, then it makes M occur in I and U in I. So if I were to put L in F, it would make M go here. So what that means is there's some sort of condition that occurs. So what I need to do is I just need to put L in two places. If I put L here and then I come down, and I could put L here. And now I'm just left with M, and I just need to see if anything triggers that. Well, if L is in F, I need M and U and I. So this would mean that M occurs there. All right? Now, are there any rules dealing with L being in I? No, there are not. Okay? And now I just need to figure out, do we have any rules dealing with M? Because this is what's in parentheses. And there is. If M is in F, L must be in I. So if I were to place M in F, I do have that necessary condition that occurs. And it doesn't mean that I can't place M in I. And again, the reason why is I don't have any sufficient condition that says if M is in I. So that basically means that M could go anywhere it wants to. Now let's look at this one. Is there any rule regarding M? And we're at the same situation again. If M is in F, L would need to be in I. And we've got that necessary condition that occurs. So M could go anywhere. I could put M here and the condition would hold, but I could also put M with I, and there is no rule talking about M with I, so I'm okay. So we have what I would call intuitively solved the scenarios. It's not wholly solved because we've said that we have 4 things that could happen from this one. This one solved, 2 from here, and 2 from here, but it's intuitively solved because we can just look at this and easily understand what has happened or what can happen given any question. So we're dealing with 4 scenarios here, and we just need to go about and answer the questions. So 13, which one of the following could be a complete and accurate list of the members on the Finance Committee? If you look at A, we have G, H, M, and W. All right, I don't have a G here. I don't have an H here. I don't have an H here, and I have no G here, so A falls out. Let's look at B, G, L, and Z. I have a G and an L here, but no Z. I don't have an L here, and I don't have a G or an L right there. Let's look at C, H, M, and Z. I could put an H, M here, but I don't have a Z, and I also don't have a W or a U. I don't have an H here. I don't have an H here. I have an H here. I have an M here, and I have a Z, but the problem is I have no U. So that could not be a complete and accurate list. And let's look at D, H, U, P, H, U, W, Z. I have a H, U, W, but I have no Z. I have no H here. I have no H here. I have a H, U, but no W, so that one wouldn't work. And let's look at E, M, U, and W. M could go, and U and W. That could be a complete and accurate list of members of the Finance Committee. Therefore, E is the answer to the question. 14, which one of the following pairs of board members cannot both serve on the Incentives Committee? Could G and H serve? Well, yeah, they could in scenario 1. This parentheses means that G and H could occur together. G and W. If you look at this scenario, G and W actually occur. H and W. We can't have an H and W here. We have no H and W here, none here, or none here. So C is the answer to the question. The H and W cannot both serve on the Incentives Committee. Let's look at D, though. M and U, well, it could occur in scenario 2. And then M and W, that could occur in scenario 4. You could have M and W right there. Okay. 15, what is the maximum number of members on the Finance Committee? Well, 2 and 2 would be 4 here. We could have 3 here. We could have 3 here. We could have 4 here. So 4 is the maximum number. Thus, the answer to the question is C. 16, if M and W both serve on the Finance Committee, then which one of the following could be true? All right, in scenario 1, M and W could both serve on the Finance Committee. We don't have it here. We do have it in scenario 3. Okay, M and W could both serve. and then we don't have it in scenario 4. So we're looking at 1 and 3. Okay, so which one of the following could be true? G and L serve on the Finance Committee. It cannot happen in 3, nor can it happen in 1. G and U both serve on the incentives. Well, G is in the finance here, and U is in the finance there, so that can't happen. C, H, and Z both serve on the Finance Committee. Z is in the incentives in both, so Z could never serve in the Finance Committee. D, L, and U serve on the Incentives Committee. It cannot happen here, but in scenario 3, you could have L and U, so that is the answer to the question, which is D. And then let's look at E. Z and U both serve on finance. Z is in incentives, again, on both, so that could never happen. So again, we know for a fact that D is the answer to the question. 17, if G serves on the Incentives Committee, then which one of the following must be true? Well, where do we have G serving on the Incentives Committee? Okay, it could happen here. And it could happen here. So it happens in 1 and 4. So which one of the following must be true? H serves on the Finance Committee. Well, the parentheses here tells us H can go anywhere, so that doesn't have to be. L serves on incentives. It happens here and here. We know for a fact that that has to be the answer to the question. And then C, let's just keep going. M serves on the finance. Again, M is in parentheses, so it can go anywhere. W serves on incentives. Well, W serves on finance here. Okay, and then E, Z serves on finance. Well, Z serves on incentive here, so it's not a must be true. Understand that in D and E, it could be true that W and Z serve on the Incentives Committee and Finance Committee respectively, but they don't have to. And the question is a must be true question. The only thing that has to happen, that given the answer choices, is B, that L serves on the Incentives Committee. Okay, that concludes Logic Game 3, LSAT 41. Thank you.